Congrats on getting beyond 1 million. What got you here won't always get you there. This is a podcast for entrepreneurs who want to reach beyond their 7-figure business and scale to 8, 9, and even 10 figures. I'm Brad Weimert, and as the founder of EasyPay Direct, I have had the privilege to work with more than 30,000 businesses, allowing me to see the data behind what some of the most successful companies on the planet are doing differently. Join me each week as I dig in with experts in sales, marketing, operations, technology, and wealth building. And you'll learn some of the specific tools, tactics, and strategies that are working today in those multi-million, 8, 9, and 10-figure businesses. Life can get exciting beyond 1 million. Tom Shipley, thanks for coming out, man. It's awesome to see you always, but I'm glad to finally sit down and get some time to talk life and shop.
By the way, it's a blast being here. Always spending time with you is something special.
I appreciate that, man. Well, we get to do a variety of odd things, and one of them, including that sounded strange, including athletic endeavors, social endeavors, and you've got a new business project that we'll talk about in a minute that I'm participating in. That's also super exciting and fun. But for a little background, I met you through War Room years ago, but the last year or so we've gotten closer. And one of the ways that I met you was Perry Belcher. At some point, I was talking. I can't remember if it was just us or you were present, but I think you were on stage, and he said, "Oh no, that guy sold more than any of us." He was like, "It's not even the same category." And coming from Perry, who has sold quite a bit of stuff online, it caught my attention. So you have gone on to some other projects that I think are impressive right now, but the company that he was referencing at the time was Atlantic Coast Brands.
That's correct.
Awesome. And that company did $2 billion in sales.
Revenue. Yeah.
That is fucking bananas. So give me a little backdrop on that company and how you got into it, and maybe how you got out of it, if you want to talk about it.
Take a step back. In 1999 is when I started my first real business. I was a serial entrepreneur for years before that, but my first real business, and it was Web 1.0. It was an omnichannel business. We mailed out millions of catalogs every month. We got up to 14 pages in the Sky Mall magazine, for those people that remember Sky Mall.
Wow.
It was a blast. And when I did some acquisitions, I sold that business off. I was looking for what the next opportunity was. And it took about 3 years of my wilderness years consulting for the aha moment of, why don't I take my playbook for my first business and use direct response marketing, which is great for brand building, to build iconic beauty brands. Now, first of all, 2005, we were laughed at. We were told you can never and will never be able to build iconic beauty brands through this less than what was thought of authentic direct response marketing. And I went, unit economics and history says you're going to be wrong. And I said, I will gladly take on Procter & Gamble, Estee Lauder, L'Oreal head on and watch. And the first year it took us, we barely eked out 300,000 in sales with this first product that we developed. We hired a lab, tested it with people we knew, and this first product line of hydroxytone. That 18 months later, we did 125 million. And over the life of that first brand, we did $1 billion.
Shit. Hold on. So there's I want to break down a couple things. The first was the first venture. What was that specifically? So you dropped some crazy stats, like 14 pages in Sky Mall. What were you selling? Okay.
So that business was I always looked at for market opportunity, or as I look at blue ocean. Now, some people say to understand red ocean and blue ocean, and what I love to use the expression of is purple ocean. So red ocean is those, if I want to get into the toilet paper space and go head to head, again, it's margins are horrible, a lot of competition. It's just very, very rough in a lot of commodity like products. So that's really red ocean. Blue ocean is where no one's doing anything. And so it's really wide open. What I'd like to look for is purple ocean opportunities where there is a strong marketplace for something, and there's just this lack of solutions, and you can pull people over into this blue ocean opportunity. So I was looking for what are the purple ocean opportunities. So I look for big markets.
Can I ask you about that real quick?
Just go for it.
So to me, what I heard or how I internalized that was sort of, the narrative of if you're the first one, you end up with arrows in your back.
Yes.
So the idea for me, when I heard Purple Ocean, I heard wait until there's some established players in the game that have proved concept in the space and maybe taken some of the arrows and then come in. Is that the idea with it, or is there another driver for Purple
Yes
Ocean?
and no.
Okay.
So let me give you a case example is 11 years ago, we're always looking for, we had a portfolio of beauty brands. We're always looking for what is the next big thing. So 11 years ago, an opportunity came up. Well, you're always looking for what the problem you want to solve. And the problem then identified is my sister and my mother said that they had thinning hair issues.
I can relate.
And I looked at the marketplace and looked at, well, what solutions are there for women? And then the big aha moment is Rogaine has as a men's line, Rogaine has a single SKU for women, and that is women's hair regrowth. There's no one specialized in it. One out of every 3 women have some type of hair loss.
Wow.
And so this mass market not being addressed. Now, everyone knew that hair loss is a big category. Everyone's focusing on men or unisex brands. And I know that if you focus on some things with your own point of view, and you can basically dominate a market. You can be the category king. And that's what we did so we spent 2 years with our PhD from Pfizer developing the first clinically proven system, FDA approved system for women's hair loss. And then we came in and no matter what channel we went into, we won. Why? We were specifically addressing a beauty brand for women that regrows women's hair. So that's an example of large marketplace, which was hair loss, taking part of that marketplace, specializing in it. So the demand was there. Women were out using men's products or unisex products, but there was no one that brought a brand. So by us creating a new vehicle and a specialization for a specific solution, we created this category, but it was out of a bigger category. And then we're able to dominate. So we identified what I call a Purple Ocean opportunity.
I love that. That's actually great clarity. So it's contrary to my thought of waiting for people to take the arrows and prove concept and actually looking for something that's totally established, totally works, and then looking at a derivative of it where there is total blue ocean, where nobody's actually capitalizing on that solution.
100%.
Love it. Super cool. Okay. So that was the first product in that initial company?
No, it was not.
Okay.
That was third brand by then.
Got it.
So
okay. So initial company, what were you selling?
So that was called the T. Shipley catalog. I have no idea where I got the name from. And so
it's very creative.
So there wasn't one source where every business professional, executive, Wall Street type person can go and source their solutions, whether it was a briefcase, portfolio, desk sets, leather, furniture. There wasn't one source. And that's what identified as that blue ocean opportunity back then. People are buying products from everywhere, but there wasn't one source. So we defined work style for the professional. And that's where we started. Everything from sourcing products to manufacturing own products. And then we had our online store, we had our catalog, and then it was just SkyMall was just perfect for us.
And to place this, what year was this?
1999. So it was Web 1.0. So from online perspective email was brand new. People were saying, how do you actually leverage? How do you build a list? How do you convert? Google AdWords was early stages. So it was just people were talking about what this thing is SEO. So it was just such a really exciting period of time.
Yeah. Yeah. Crazy. Okay. So you moved through that, and I want to get to Atlantic because that's a huge revenue. What was the bookend of that? Where did that company go? Why did you get out of it? Did you sell it? Did you quit? Did it explode? What happened?
Well, good questions. There's always a question is the success of a business, how do you measure the success of business? Is what you did along the journey or what the closing chapter was? It's a really good question.
It's a great question.
Yeah.
It's a great question.
And I have some businesses that they had extremely successful runs, and at the end, they just wound it down.
Yeah.
Or they turned it over to their employees or something. So, but the years between were magic. So we had a successful exit a year ago, June, to private equity.
A year ago, June.
June is when we sold off that business.
Shit. So in 2021?
Yes.
Okay. So that's existed the entire time.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting.
We started 2005 and It was definitely a 5-year business, and then we were up for another 5 years, and then.
Sorry, this is Atlantic. You're talking
Atlantic
about.
Coast Branch. Yeah.
Got it. So what happened with the initial one in '99?
Okay, so that was that from. I did some acquisitions along the way, and I sold that portfolio of brands off in 2001.
Okay.
I stayed on for a year.
Oh.
And then I left.
So quick cycle. So that was a 2-year.
Yeah, 1999 through 2002.
Got it.
Yeah.
Why did you sell it?
We needed capital to grow. So basically, we merged our businesses with 2 other businesses, and we got a capital infusion, and that was it.
And you were ready for a new thing?
No, I was ready to scale it to the next level. And ultimately, that one didn't turn out to be that exact honeymoon ending than I hoped.
Got it.
Which was they had a different vision for the business than I did. And then that's where the golden rule comes in.
And they had the gold.
They had the gold.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Got it. So you brought partners in for a capital infusion. Then you had
and we took 2 other businesses. We merged into ours. What's funny is it was based out of Orlando, Florida. And they said, well, we're up in New Jersey and our business is up in New Jersey. So we want you to move to New Jersey and run our portfolio of businesses, and we'll merge your business in. And I said, I will never, ever, ever move to New Jersey. And yes, 5 years later, we moved to New Jersey for a whole new adventure, the business that we actually bought up there. So it's kind of funny. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay. So close that chapter. What was in Atlantic? That is the era where you did the Rogaine for women.
So yes. So we started with hydroxytone. That was our first brand.
And what is that?
And it was skincare for women. Skincare.
Okay.
And it was just a line on fire. You found it in, retailers like, Ulta. We had a number of retail partners in addition to, most of our business was online though. But we also did during the transition of all of our brands. Again, the one powerful thing for people to remember is that every offer will eventually die. Every channel will actually become basically its utilization or its effectiveness will go down to where it's not worth focusing on. So to give you an example and we've always knew that. So we were always testing new channels. So between all of our brands, especially hydroxytone, at one time we were the second largest advertiser in print advertising in the United States, including Pride magazine.
Wow.
And at one time, and then you fast forward 5 years later, we did zero print. One time we were the 15th largest short form TV advertiser in the United States. Fast forward 5 years later, we did zero short form TV. We were the 3rd largest short form radio advertiser in the United States. Fast forward 5 years later, no radio. Again, even look at our online. Online has always been 50% of our sales, but the channels in which it made up changed. And one time it was affiliate, then it switched to us buying our own media, and it was Facebook. And I guarantee you, right now I know the amount of Facebook spend is a fraction of what we used to do because you have to be prepared that every channel will die. And every offer, that's why you always need to be constantly testing. But that first brand was hydroxytone. We started some other skincare brands that were purely from an online perspective. We had a partnership with Christy Brinkley Beauty. And 11 years ago is when we launched Keranique, and Keranique became the dominant brand because we were the category king, and therefore it was successful in every retailer we put into, from Ulta to Nordstrom's to CVS. Again, you'll find it right there. But ultimately, you got to be very careful in omnichannel businesses to not let the tail wag the dog. So while retail seems exciting, it's a tough business. It might give you valuation, but it's one that cannibalizes on where the real money is in direct response.
Yeah.
And therefore, it turned out to be 10% of our sales.
Awesome.
Amazon was 15% of our sales at the very end, and the rest of it was all direct response.
Oh, that's amazing. And there's probably 17 different paths we could go down there, because when you talk about omnichannel, first off, I think unless somebody is taking a monster swing, being a $1 billion plus swing, most people don't go omnichannel. Most people figure out a path, and this is the way they drive, and this is what they're doing. And I love the frame of every offer dies. And I think it's such a good lesson to listen to that over the course of, in your case, you cited 3 different 5-year cycles. So there's 15 years of education and running an offer that you made work well. and then pivoting to the next thing and then adjusting to the next thing. Today, those cycles can happen fast, right? So on Facebook or on Google or TikTok or LinkedIn, or pick a digital platform, or direct mail for that matter right now, which is more of a clear space. People find offers that work and they'll flare up and then die.
Right.
And so we have companies that we see come in through Easy Pay Direct who are doing $1 million a month, $2 million a month, but it's ad driven, and it will literally
that's it,
hit the ground, and the offer just burns out. The audience is gone, or that's it. And then they go down to 40 grand a month, and the business is literally over. So how do you know when you've run the end, or when you need to keep testing and iterating?
You always do.
Keep testing and iterating.
You should always be expanding your products and your channels. Always investing 10, 20% of what you have into that. That's basically to stay alive. And inevitably, the question is, why are you in business?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's really driving you personally? What's driving the investors? Also, what's driving the business? And the question is your goal to make some quick cash and leave, knowing your business is going to die? Or are you trying to create iconic, decade-enduring brands? And there's nothing more powerful than a brand. A real authentic brand where you have core customers that are passionate, that are advocates for your brand, that have a clear expectation, enjoy it, love to share with their friends about it, word of mouth, and socially online. And people just relish your products. And therefore, as you're coming up with new products, you already have a warm audience or hot audience, however you look at, that is waiting for the next one. And if you can just consistently come out with products and deliver upon your expectation, exceed it with your customers, then that's what you want. But you have to find ways to keep it fresh.
Okay, so let me ask you about that for a minute, because from both sort of a philosophic perspective and also a tactical business perspective, you look at a market the size of a third of the female population, because you said a third of the female population has some sort of hair loss. Mm-hmm. Why create a new product ever? Why are you not just iterating and marketing and driving deep into that customer base? Because certainly you're never going to exhaust a third of the female population.
Well, that's a great one. If you think about it, we're addressing, so we have women who have concerns, great example, about their thinning hair. Well, look at everything they put on their hair. Is everything they're putting on their hair, is it helping or hurting? So we want to own more of the wallet share. And if you can, keep on expanding. Okay, so it's shampoo, conditioner. Okay, but what about, and there's the hair regrowth treatment. But what about some type of deep cleansing mask? What about if they're using some type of products to just basically hold and style their space? What about the brush they're using? What about if they sleep at night on the wrong type of pillowcase? That can be an issue. So we want to provide them, also sell satin sheets to them for pillowcases. Again, you can keep on brainstorming. Awesome. So we end up having, I think, 23 products in the line for women. And it could come, and because of Amazon is such an incredible platform for testing new products and quickly launching. And it's a fraction of the cost that you're going to have to invest in getting a product successful on Amazon, that you can use that as a testing ground and growing from there. And if you have a brand people are visiting and they're visiting your store, it's easier to cross-sell other products to them. So that's an easy way of a hack for developing new products, if you know the product launch formula. So, we talked earlier, and I'll give some just context. It's not always rosy. It's not, there are times that you feel you have not only wind at your back, but gale force winds at your back. You're feeling so good. You're flying high. And the first thing I always tell entrepreneurs is, no matter how good you think it is, it's never that good. And whenever you think that you're at the end, there's no other options, and you're done, and you think it's as bad and as low as it can get, it's never that bad. So just be very careful that the highs aren't as high, and you should always be planning for the lows, but it's never that bad. Yeah. There's always solutions that are out there. And so at Atlantic Coast Brands, we had those times where, you get home run winning products and everything's great and cash is coming in. And we grew our company, again, understanding to scale to 125 in net revenue, close to 175 in gross revenue during that period of time on an annual basis. And coming back then, you didn't have SaaS platforms you can plug into. There weren't solutions. So we were building everything off the shelf at the time. We had we had teams of programmers here and in India and the Ukraine building our back-end systems, because basically it's building the plane as we're flying. But at that point, you're flying at Mach speeds where everything is risky.
Yeah. Well, I want to go into mindset, because I heard some of the seeds of that, but I want to pull back to, you gave a pull back to new products versus driving deep. And you gave a really good, like, it's sort of, to me, surprising in the moment, frame around how many other things you could sell to that woman who is that wants a hair loss or regrowth product specifically for women. But one of the challenges that many entrepreneurs have, and mistakes they make, is splitting their focus, and they compromise their core competency in the effort to grab the shiny object. And so releasing new products is a distinct activity and initiative. Did you feel like it distracted from the core drive, or how did you prevent it from getting in the way of the core drive?
Launching new brands is a distraction. And again, as an entrepreneur, well, we succeeded in 3 brands. Let's go for a 4th one. That takes massive amounts of work, and the risk and the investments are very significant. When you're talking about products, if you had the right, you have to say, why am I launching this? Is it a cross-sell product? Is it an additional product for retail? Just understand the investment. You have your launch formula, and it's not that big. If it's a hero product where you're going to be launching your direct campaigns on it, its own websites, its own funnels, it's a lot more initiative. So there's risk there from the investment, but it's what you have to do to keep the business alive.
Got it. So for your model, you felt like it was necessary to have new products to bring in the cash to keep the engine moving?
The cash, and knowing that a product is going to eventually, it's going to wear off. So you have to have your next heroes that are ready to go, and that's just the investment that you make. But you always make sure that you're putting the correct proportion of time in every product and never getting emotionally carried away. And if you have a product that you get your initial testing back and it's a dog, try a few new things, but then just move on.
That's tough. It's tough to invest time and energy, money into something and let go of it, or it can be tough.
The worst thing one of the worst products we've ever launched. I'm sure there were some bad ones along the way. We had our hydroxytone line. So we always looking for what are problems that our women were having. So one of the things that impact a decent percent of the population is, if you look close at some of women's faces, you can actually see their pores, and their women are very self-conscious if they have large pores in their face. So we came up with a product, and we launched it. Our channel back then was radio, was our dominant channel. So we launched a pore minimizer. But when you call a product the hydroxytone pore minimizers, how do you spell pore? Exactly. So we didn't know why the product flopped on radio, but that's it.
Got it.
Yeah. It's a bad minimizer.
Yeah.
It's a sucky one. It's the poor one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Versus we were just thinking PORE. So,
yes. Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
But again, with that product is, you give your couple swings at the plate, and then if it just doesn't work, you move on. There's a lot of other products, and it became, from what could be a hero product to just be a cross-sell product. We'll make money from it. We're just not going to develop its own campaigns on it.
So within Atlantic Coast Brands, you had
hydroxytone.
So you had hydroxytone, and it was this was the skincare brand.
Skincare.
Right. Was the hair loss a separate thing?
Yep.
Hair regrowth.
Another brand, Carnique. Yes.
Another brand. Got it. So at what point did you make the call? So you've given some frame for, I'm driving a core product within a brand. It's creating. And then in my head, what I heard was, I'm creating new products to maximize the LTV of that buyer, of that customer.
Correct.
Right? Because selling to an existing customer is easier than getting a new customer. And you're building off of the brand loyalty or brand adoption that they've started to have, right? And then you also said, new products are easy, new brands are tough.
Yes.
So at what point did you say, hey, like, where was the revenue of that initial brand where you thought, you know what, I'm going to spin up a new brand and do this shit all over again? Did you just find something that triggered it for you?
Well, it was deliberate? With Christy Brinkley was an opportunity that fell on our laps. We were introduced. She was looking for new partners to do the skincare, her skincare brand. So that was like an opportunity when it came. We were looking for new product niches that would expand past skincare. And that's when we, brought the idea of hair regrowth. We did some research and identified this massive market that was different. But in that case it takes a little bit of research, but if you're a good product person, a good marketer, you just know when you hit a home run idea. It just was too logical to understand the vast size of this opportunity not to go for it, and using our basic playbook, but not to go for it. And then, but looking at things past that. So if I say what lessons did you, I have a lot of lessons, but the lesson I learned there is we would have been better suited at that point buying additional brands than launching them from scratch all day long. And I'm going to say this is where alignment with partners, we didn't have alignment on this. And therefore, unless you're both aligned, the answer is no. So I always felt that there's a certain amount of hubris that you have when you say you can do it better on your own and you're starting brands from scratch and businesses versus just buying an existing business that has momentum. Momentum is really difficult for all businesses and all brands and all products to get. So if you can buy one that already has it and then you know how to operate it better is where the magic comes in.
When did you start buying? Did you have background in acquisition?
No, it was in 2000. I bought 2000 is when I bought my first brand. And it was with the T. Shipley, and we bought a division of Reliable Home Office. An investment banker I was friendly with brought me a deal. Boise Cascade was spinning off one of their divisions and breaking it into parts, and one of them was a $15 million a year catalog. They said, "Do you want to buy this?" And Reliable Home Office, and it fit my niche, and that's what we bought. And again, I'm going to say that the biggest change I made over the years is I always looked at acquisitions as opportunistic that came to me, and always keep my eye open. When, if you're really good, is you should be finding those once in a lifetime opportunities. Roland Frazier says this, is these once in a lifetime opportunities should be coming up every few months. If you know how to have the conversations and to put the word out there and have a successful way of feeding the pipeline. I did not know this back then, so that we were opportunistic, and it wasn't high agenda on us to go out and do acquisitions. But that's it. But I did several different acquisitions over the years, and I love that model, and I love what it can do. It is this maybe is a great example. Atlantic Coast Brands, we did $300,000 in sales that first year.
Right.
What it take to get there is, well, contrary to what I told my wife I would never do again, is we went all in. We basically used all of our cash, all of our savings, maxed our credit cards out, maxed our mortgage and our house out, and investing in building this business. And my partner comes into work at that point, and we were overlooking a horse farm in Richmond, Virginia, is where we built this business out of. And before we moved to New Jersey, and my partner comes in, he sees me scratching on an application. He said, "Tom, that looks like an application for financing, but I know that you and I are both done. So what are you doing?" I said, "I have 2 cars that I own. We can get loans out on our cars." He just gave me an app, and that's basically that cash flow eating through all of our bumpers gave us the cash we needed to get to the next level and to flip our cash around and start making money on the business. Wow. But again, it's a question of resourcefulness, but the business had its challenges because it was 2 of us in this attic outsourcing everything, starting from scratch. And back then you couldn't just plug in. Nothing was easy. You can plug into like now. So then we were doing some consulting on the side with a company up in Hoboken, New Jersey, which is how we ended up in New Jersey. And we're doing some consulting up there, and we loved this business. It was a vitamin supplement business called Urban Nutrition. Loved the owners, and we were talking with the owners one day, helping them take their online business offline. And it was a $15 million business, doing $1.5 million in cash. We, of course, were still burning cash from our business. And they had, in 2 townhouses in Hoboken on the water, they had customer service on one floor. They had the programmers on the other floor, and the adjoining one in the kitchen is where they had their quote unquote warehouse. And they were a very efficient operation, and accounting on the 2nd floor, and the owners lived on the 3rd floor. Wow. And we visited them. We said, "We love your business." And one day, and their platform, they built their platform from scratch. They owned their platform. There weren't platforms out there back then, 2005, you could do.
Like an e-commerce, CRM, shopping cart.
Yes, all in one.
Got it, yeah.
And so we said, either we're going to build something just like this, or we're going to buy you. Do you want to sell? And they said, well, we're always open to it. And that's how the dialogue started. So the question is if you have no capital, like I just said, we were out, we were done.
Yeah.
If you have no capital and you have your business and it doesn't have a history of making money, how do you go and buy a business?
That was going to be my question for you.
So we went out, found the best person we know about raising mezzanine level capital, which is it's debt, but you give a little bit of equity away. So it's quasi debt, quasi equity. And we found out the best broker for that. He went out and created a whole new business plan from scratch based on us buying this business and what the combined businesses look like. And then we met with a number of different mezzanine banks and we had presentations one week. We picked our favorite. And the interesting thing is we had 2 bids that day to buy our business. One from a group out of North Carolina. It was a young investment banker that was in. He was really enthusiastic about our business and shared with us everything that he would do if he was involved. The other one, the rate wasn't quite as good as the first guy, but he was a more mature banker. He was out of Tennessee. And he said, share with your plan. He said, He was just he's been around them. He said, I like what you're doing. I'd like to be involved and help you out however you need. And he gave us an offer. And so we went with him because we didn't want someone who was young and enthusiastic, like you see with a lot of private equity firms, they've never run businesses, want to roll up their sleeve and get in bed with you. We didn't want that.
Got it.
So we went with, they were Harbinger. They were phenomenal for us for the years we used them, but we went in, we were able to buy the company. It was 85% cash, 15% earnout. But I will say that 15% earnout that we bought out 2 years later, they made more money from that than they did the initial 85% because we were aligned and we grew the business. But that's how again, the question is never in special forces. I learned something is that, they say that it was in the Israeli IDF and we're taught that in medics course, we're taught that Chavesh Tov ze Chavesh Melter. A good medic is one who improvises. Chayal Tov ze Chayal Melter. A good soldier is one who improvises. It's never a question of resources. In the army, you never have enough. In the field, you'll never have enough. The question is resourcefulness. And I took that same idea and took it to entrepreneurship is you never have the resource. You just have to be fucking creative. And that's what we did is we came up with creativity. The average person would say, you don't have a shot at doing it. We said, why not?
Yeah.
And we ended up buying this business. That's why I moved to New Jersey. And then it was because we bought this $15 million a year business. A year later, they did $35 million in revenue.
Ooh.
And overall, and hydroxytone, our core skincare brand, just took off because now we had an infrastructure team, all the pieces that were in place for a skincare line. Amazing. And then combined, they hit 125 million, especially because also that
in
combined
18 months.
In 18 months, that was the combined tsunami also of 2008.
What happened in 2008 that was good?
That's exactly it. In every downturn, there are massive opportunities.
Got it.
So I came into work. All the banks were seizing up. We were afraid that our bank was going to shut us down from our line of credit. And Drew and I said, we have choices. Do we lay off half the staff and just weather this thing out? Or do we go and find what's out there? So we started talking we were doing a lot of radio advertising at that time. And so we went out to our radio advertisers and using the broker we did, and we negotiated guaranteed deals on our CPA basis. So we knew we couldn't lose money. And they said, this will be the best time ever for us to buy media because it's going to be cheaper. There's no one can ever afford media. Even your, L'Oreal, Procter & Gamble all cut their advertising budgets. So there was so much cheap media out there that we tested it. And that first month was explosive growth. And then we went all in.
All right. So I want to back up for a second, but also clarify. So buying CPA media is cost per acquisition. So you negotiated deals with.
No, we were buying straight media,
Yep.
But we were able to get guarantees, caps on it because they know where to sell the media to. So they were willing to give us some backstop. So if the conversion, because basically 2008, everyone was scared. We were worried about conversion. Who's going to be actually buying skincare in that period of time? So we got them to give us a guarantee that worst case scenario, we won't let you lose money on it.
Got it. Oh, that's amazing. So as long as your cost per acquisition was X, then the media buy would be stable.
Yep.
Or it would never go above that number.
Yep.
That's amazing. So backing out, you said when you were talking about creativity and finding a solution to the problem, do you remember the sort of the metrics around the deal of that $15 million acquisition? Because if I'm sitting as the funder, right, and I'm thinking, who should I give money to? I've got two entrepreneurs that have a brand that is burning cash. You're lighting cash on fire. You've leveraged everything. You literally all of your assets are leveraged. But you have a $15 million business that's got a 10% margin kicking off $1.5 million a year. What was the multiple that you bought on, and what were the financing terms? Do you remember?
The multiple was 2.5.
Okay. Of that $1.5 million?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So it was a very good price that we bought into. So that was one factor. It was a business been around for 5 years, and it had stable growth, stable profitability. And ultimately, hydroxinone was a startup at that time. And so we didn't go with the fact that we started hydroxinone. It was a side discussion. We went
You just financed the
based
successful
on my
business.
background. Again, when they lent me, when any lender lends to you, it's because of who the people are behind it, either the leadership team, the management team, or the founders or the founders. From us, they looked at Drew's background, my partner. They look at my background, what I did with my prior business and my success there. And that's what they lent off of, as well as meeting us. They trusted us.
Got it.
And so the deal was, we bought it at 85% at 2.5 times, and we had a fixed way of buying out the remaining 15%. And that was the deal on that business. From, I think back then it was a 12% interest rate. And then it was, I want to say, is either 10% of the enterprise is what they owned from phantom equity.
So rough numbers here, 1.5. So you bought it for $3.5 million ish.
Yes.
And 85% is what they needed. So you're down to 3.2 or something.
Yep.
And at 12%, I don't know what the payment on that is. 15 grand a month, 20 grand a month, something like that.
Yep.
And you're immediately, so the payment on it's 20 grand a month, call it. And you're
throwing off 150.
And you're throwing off 150. Right.
Under 150.
Wild.
Yeah.
Wild.
Yeah. Which is also, from a lender perspective, it's what mitigates the risk.
Right. It makes total sense for everybody.
Yeah.
So you were happy with the 12% and you could have paid 20 and it would have been okay.
100%. And therefore, when people are freaking out about interest rate, if your business is profitable, you can afford anything. Yeah.
Well, that's one of the things that I loved about this last run in real estate in Austin, which is, changing. I'm not even going to say slowing down. It's changing. But I, quote unquote, overpaid on many properties. And one of them actually, after conversation and guidance from you, we were on a run and we were talking about a property that I was looking at, and this guy wanted 30% over the number that I gave him, which was already too much. But I spent 2 years. The way that I frame it is it's a residential lot, and I wanted to buy the neighbor's lot. And because this is a home that I'm building, it's personal stuff. But I spent 2 years drinking shitty beer and whiskey with him. And he's a great person. Like, actually genuinely enjoy talking to him. But we were both very clear, like, I want to buy your property. And you said, you've spent how long? And what you said to me was really important. And while I've held this frame for a long time, sometimes you need to hear it. And sometimes you're emotionally tied to something, as I was. And so I was sort of emotionally tied to this game of like, no, this is the market value for it. This is what it's worth. And you said, would you still buy it at 30% more? Would the numbers still work at 30% more? And I said, yeah, all day. And you said, well, what the fuck are you doing? Just offer him 30% more and be done with it. And functionally, that's what I did. And that cut out this whole chapter of my life of spinning my wheels and putting energy into this thing, because the numbers worked at 30% more. But I think that's a really good lesson, obviously there, but I live it in real estate all the time, which is you can quote unquote overpay. It doesn't matter if the numbers work.
Yep, 100%. And people when ego gets caught up in negotiation and pride, what's the point? If the numbers work out, if you pay a little bit more, but if you know what you're doing, you're going to make more on the other side.
Right.
It's going to, 5 years from now, you're not even remember that you paid. It's going to seem silly to you. You even hesitated at that.
Well, what's great on that too is another frame for that is, and this isn't true of all situations, but that's a return on relationship versus return on investment consideration, right? If you can make the other party more money and you still have a great deal, honestly, for me, that's a better situation all the way around, because both parties then are ecstatic about it, as opposed to one feeling like, I did pretty good. right? If you can overpay and then they feel great about it, man, that's the win in my book.
Because why are we here?
Well, yes.
What's the whole point of it? It's like anyone struggling. All you can think about is Maslow's hierarchy, when all you're worried about is, can I afford rent next month? Can I afford to put food on the table? Can I afford to take care of my family? It's tough to think about anything else. However, what I always say to myself is, this too shall pass. Really, the rough times, they always pass. And the question is the person that ultimately the test of character is, how do you behave? How do you act during those periods of duress, stress? Because ultimately, when you're in your deathbed, you look back, do you really say is, wow, I wish I would have negotiated harder for that extra percent. I wish I would have had an extra 100,000, $1 million in my bank account to pass on. Or do you say, how many lives have I impacted over my lifetime?
Well,
and the moments and memories.
And I don't know the answer to that. And I actually think that people answer both ways, right? I actually quite literally wake up in the middle of the night and can't sleep some nights because of some stupid shit. Like, man, I should have negotiated more. I can't believe I lost this much money in this thing. And you're right in that it's a waste of energy to think about things that way. And ultimately, it impedes your ability to keep moving. And I think for me, where I'm learning the most growth right now is to consistently test and iterate. And the only way I can do that is making decisions with sometimes more money, sometimes less information, and I would say a less than ideal scenario, and making the decision anyway. And then taking whatever it is for the next moment and making a new decision, right? But I like that mentality a lot.
Brad, at your point in life is, I'm going to say that there's a certain point where your gut matters. I'm going to say, if you never did shit, how good is your gut? You got to be very careful.
Yeah.
But in business, you've been around the block, you've been building your business. Your gut should be your guide. And 70% of the information with good gut is good enough. And it's all about several things. Massive imperfect action. Keep on making decisions without analysis paralysis. And the other thing is understand the difference between one-way doors and two-way doors. I think it was Charlie Munger talks about, his analogy is horrible. He talks about skinning cats versus shaving the hair off. I like to say sheep. Okay. Might be able to afford to take all my wool for that season and bet it on something, but I'm not going to kill the sheep and sell the meat off. Okay. Then I got nothing.
Right.
So when you're making decisions, the question is it one of those one-way doors or two-way doors? Is it something you can survive if it goes wrong? So that's risk level.
Yeah.
And then understanding is, what's the worst case that happens there? But then if it's not one of those decisions, is 70% of the information, go with your gut and go on. Because the more decisions you can make, and you're going to make mostly ones in that direction that will work, you're going to have a lot better position than killing yourself along the way. And just go. Once you make a decision, go. It doesn't matter what happened in the past. You second guessing yourself is wasted.
That's tough. You said something that I want to highlight and remember, which was 70% of the information you said something like massive action.
Massive imperfect action.
Massive imperfect action.
Massive imperfect action.
Imperfect action. Yeah, that was great. Massive imperfect action. I love that.
So something that everyone understands, there's only highlights and great things that happen. So again, we had good and bad things that happened at Atlantic Coast Brands, even with that level of sales.
Yeah.
In 2018, finally happened. We had 3 offers to buy the company for between 55 and 85 million. And we had private equity firms that were jumping just on us. They were constantly calling us, and these were great periods of time. So we decided to go for the highest offer and basically pursue that. And not going forward with a smaller offer, even though we can close that very quickly. But we decided to go for the extra money because it was too much money to leave on the table.
Sure. And
during that Q4 2018, the manufacturer, Karen Inc. was our biggest brand by that period of time. And our manufacturer for the only FDA approved a product that actually worked in our system, Chapter 7, like this. Doors were closed. Couldn't get access to it. You have your revenue, half of which is coming from auto ship customers. What happens when you can't ship your auto ship customers?
They stop.
Basically is. And then reactivating them when you have product, you can't do it.
tough.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. So we went from making about $700,000-800,000 a month to losing 6 months later, losing $600,000 a month.
Oh my gosh.
All the bids for buying the business were gone. Our probability of doing something short term to find any buyer, even if we turn it around, because people want history that you're stable. So all those dreams. And I remember that our bank called up and said, "You guys are done. We're cutting you off." And I just joined Russell Brunson's Inner Circle.
Let me ask you about this before you tell this, because I want to hear that story, but not everybody operates off of a line of credit. So when you said your banks called you and said you're done, what was it that you were dependent on the bank for? And why?
It was our mezzanine line. Basically, we had grown our mezzanine line to scale, help buy more media, and scale the business.
Got it. So you were dumping, let me see if I've got this right. You were basically dumping all of the profit you had back into advertising to grow the brand.
Yep.
So you weren't concerned about the margin or what you were taking off the table. It was just fuel.
It's fuel to grow.
Got it. Awesome.
And so, but at this point, you're losing it. You have a big bank line. It basically is our mezzanine lender. They said, "You're done. We're cutting you off." And they can either basically take all the cash and just whatever they can get a hold of, liquidate our assets, inventory, and we'd be done. They can sell us off for a fraction of what we're worth, because they could just say, "Okay, we're going to liquidate. We're going to sell this off." And so if, instead of the 65 to 85, if they said, we're going to sell this off, and if we get 10 million or 15 million, we're fine. Yeah, they have that option to do that. And of course, then you're left without anything.
Right.
So it was our first Russell Brunson's mastermind Inner Circle, and we went up there first meeting, and I was going for a run with my wife. Pam came with me, and we're running along the Boise River, and it's one of those days where like the earth is sitting still. I just remember it was, those days when you're running where there's like gray clouds and there's a little moisture in the air that you almost feels like it's spitting with that. It's not really quite rain, but it's almost rainish, and it's a cold day, and we're running along the river. And I said, "Pam, it's dark." She said, "Okay, let's go there." She said, "What's going on?" I said, "You know what's going on?" She said, "No, spell it out for me." I said, "Well, we went from making money, losing money. All the offers to buy the business are off the table. Our mezzanine lender is threatened to shut us down. We're losing $600,000 a month." And my head of marketing said he has no solutions. We've done everything we can. She said, "And so what?" I said, "So what?" She said, "What happened?" I said, "First of all, 1,000 to 1,500 people in our ecosystem are going to lose their jobs." She said, "That's horrible, but then what?" She said, "We're going to lose the business, and basically everything we've worked for is gone." She said, "And then what?" I said, "Well, because we're personally guaranteed on some things, we're basically going to lose everything we have and probably lose our house, maybe lose the cars also." She said, "And then?" I said, "And then the way we're structured, we'll probably owe money to the IRS." She said, "And then what?" I said, "You and I are sitting in our apartment starting again." She said, "And where will we be 5 years from now?" I said, "Looking at a liquidity event between $50 to $100 million was something new." She said, "So what are you worried about?" She said, and I said, "You're right. I have my girls and I have you. So what else?"
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome and beautiful and challenging if you didn't have belief in yourself or maybe a track record before that, right? So if that's the very first thing, that's a hell of a lot of belief from a pretty amazing woman.
Yes. And she's always had that. And therefore, I always say, who's on your team? Look around you, who's on your team, who's there supporting you. And it should be people that are giving you positive energy, support you, because it helps you think clear. So what we do is I went and did that. I said, "Okay, time to put together this massive and perfect plan." I then created a list. First of all, I used my network. And so there's this thing about, I went to the Inner Circle meeting and I was vulnerable. Instead of going up there as the largest company in the Inner Circle and the pride of what I've accomplished in our brands, I shared everything where we were. I got naked. Not physically, but just emotionally.
Good call, probably.
Yeah. Especially Boise, Idaho.
Right.
I shared everything. I said, "What ideas?" And I took everyone's idea, wrote them down. Then I called Perry and Ryan. And I said, "Perry, here's where I'm at. What do you got?" So he gave me his ideas. Ryan gave me his. Talked to Richard Linder, same thing. I called Roland, same thing. I called a lot of people that I did, said, "I don't really care that people know my secret. I want ideas." And I took everyone's ideas. And then I said the same thing to my internal team. And I put all my ideas in a massive sheet. And then with that, I said, "Okay, if I can succeed at this, what's the impact? How big of a impact to the profitability? what is the resources necessary, high to low, resources necessary to achieve it, probability of success. And based on that, I was able to say, let me find the different projects that have a high probability of success, don't require a lot of resources, and have a massive impact. And those are the ones we implemented and got the team together. We put together a schedule, and it was war rooms. It was every day meeting, checking status on this, and reprioritizing every week based on our learning. And from that, I did let go of my head of marketing, which was a dedicated, great guy, but unfortunately he didn't have the answer. A couple of people left with him when I did that. You always have casualties when you're down. I went and hired 2 rock stars. And so people think you're losing money. Why would you go out and hire people? You make sure it's who's on your team, making sure that you have people that are all heart, all in, and are smart and can do it. 2 incredible additions. And we just went and executed like crazy. And then over time, we got back to the same level of profitability. And by showing our plan to our bank, they said, okay, we'll give you another 90 days, another 90 days. And if you deliver, and not everything we did is successful, it never will be.
Right.
But the understanding that you just need enough wins and direct response to win.
That's awesome. And brutal. The question that pops up for me is, and this is, I mean, these are choices. You've framed this in a few different ways, but the question was, what do you want out of business, or why are you in business, right? So when you look at that history, have you ever thought of, or do you think that you would have pulled more money off the table through the process because you were producing a tremendous amount of top line, but it sounds like all of it was going back into the business? At any point, have you thought, man, in retrospect,
there was more taken off the table.
Well, good. Okay.
there was money taken off the table.
Okay,
right?
good.
Absolutely.
Well, but that's the question, right? Because in how much, like, did you ever think, because as you were telling the story about your wife and the run with your wife, and you're thinking, okay, so we're going to lose everything, and we're going to have debt to the IRS. Are there do you have backstops? Do you have safety nets? Do you have things that make you feel comfortable in those situations that allow you to operate?
The answer is yes. And over time, you get smarter. And I'm going to say that the advisors that are out there and the access to information is a lot better now.
Sure.
It's great now. Again, so you should always have ways of pulling money consistently out of your business and putting in safe investments, period. You should always have ways of creating containers to protect that against any situation. And again, it's this thing that you invest in over time, and you don't put all your eggs in one basket. And there are times you make bets on new things, and you make that very consciously and carefully. That is the best strategy you can, is by basically taking always figuring out a way to filter money out of the business and putting it in safe assets to making sure you're comfortable and you always have a plan B.
Yeah.
And your future is set.
Yeah. I love that. I had it was actually not even a mentor. It was a very good friend of mine's mentor. And I, by proxy, heard this and thought, man, this aligns with me. And he owned his primary home free and clear. And he did that despite it being sort of a suboptimal way to allocate funds, maybe. Correct. Right?
Yep.
You're not leveraging it. Mm-hmm. But for him, he wanted the security to know that if everything hit the fan, he would have a nice place to live, a roof over his house, and he could get a job at McDonald's and pay his bills if he needed to. That was his language. I would probably pick a different place to work. But the idea was the same, which is if I can have that security, it allows me to operate from a different place, emotionally and mentally.
Scarcity mindset versus abundant mindset. And I'm going to say that it's that key with the mindset that you can have nothing and less than nothing and still have an abundance mindset. Doesn't mean being an idiot and stupid about where you can make clear decisions from. And that's something that you have to, well, either there's certain personalities that are just always living in, I don't know whether it's denial or a place of not really caring about the consequences and live there. And there's others that are very conscious that the other shoe will drop. The question is when their shoe will fall. But just be able to live in that area of abundance, because if you live in scarcity, it's tough to think clearly. What Pam did on that run, she allowed me to switch from very few options in a place of mindset of scarcity to one of abundance. Once I switched there, oh my God, it's like everything became color and I could see clearly. And there were so many options that were out there. There are so many lessons you learn along the way and some painful ones. I'm going to say that once we turned the business around and then this thing called, I don't know if you ever heard of it, called COVID hit.
What is it?
COVID? Okay.
No,
so March of 2000, again, the world's changing. And so us entrepreneurs that have been there before know that you can sit back and you can go and watch Tiger Kings and spend your time doing that. Or you can say, oh my God, the world's about to change. What opportunities that are out there? So what I did at that period of time was I said, let me buy an Amazon or e-com business inside, because obviously we can't sell Atlantic Coast brands now. Capital dried up a little bit. It's going to be a little bit before it comes back. Could be 6 months, could be 9 months, could be a year. So let me do something fun, and I don't have to commute out of Jersey City. So I save 3 hours a day.
Let me pause to set time frame. So 2018, you have this almost catastrophic collapse of a manufacturer. The business goes from 700 a month net positive to negative 600. You're bleeding 600 grand a month. That's 18. So you're going through this for, 18 months to 24 months until COVID hits. COVID hits and you've stabilized Atlantic Brands. You've stabilized that business. It's moving, but you have no exit at the moment because there's no money.
Correct.
Because the world is in full panic about COVID.
Correct.
Leave the rest out of it. So this is the point where you think, okay, the business is running. It's good now. It's stable, but we can't sell it. And I see opportunity through distress throughout the world. Where is the opportunity? Mm-hmm. And so that's where the story is now.
Yeah, and so one thing I did is I'm always looking for third order effects. And what are the third order effects? So first order effects are, let me go back to the days where Henry Ford created mass production, Model Ts coming out. And so millions of Americans are buying Model Ts. So what's the first order is the invention, and then what's going on in the automobile industry. The second order is the fact that now suddenly people are driving, were spending times on weekends. They were able to drive further away, but then they get to a certain point and they needed gas.
Okay, well, yes,
so then gas stations started being built and chains of gas stations further and further from the cities across the country. Now, as people suddenly said, I can actually drive now to different gas stations, let me stay somewhere. There were boarding houses, but boarding houses being booked up. People didn't know where to stay. People were using little books where to go. But that's when the first motel chains started, and then hotel chains, and now the hotel industry as we know it. That was a third order effect. So my question coming out when COVID hit is, what's the first, second, and third order effect going to be from this shift and this shift to online buying, and just there were some massive shifts there. So while I was thinking about that, so I'm thinking strategically, asking questions. At the same time, I said, let me just push myself and just go have some fun and buy an Amazon e-commerce brand. And then I started talking to a buddy of mine who lives here in Austin. I love Brian Burt. I said, hey, maybe we'll do this together. And then I started playing the game with adding zeros to ideas. What would happen instead of buying one brand a year, maybe two, why not buy one brand a month? Go for another zero. What if instead of buying one brand a month, I bought 10 brands a month? That's impossible, especially if there's, big brands, small brands, and that's impossible based on everything I know about integration and scaling and what it takes to manage brands. It's impossible. Well, then I need to change. Can I change my operating assumptions? Well, what would have to be true for me to do that? Then I start looking at every one of my operating assumptions, what I know has to be true in business in order to grow scale businesses. And I started going through those and writing those down. Say, well, if I do that, then I can buy the 10 brands a month, and then it'll be difficult for Procter & Gamble and Johnson & Johnson to compete against us because we're going to have the leading consumer products good company in the world, and it's going to be a $2 billion business. What are the things that I need in my assumption? Well, in order to do this based on where multiples were and what sales prices are, and there were only, I think, 5 aggregators that period of time, I said, I need probably $100 million in equity and $350 million in debt.
So pause for a second. So 5 aggregators at the time, meaning that this model was not new. At this point, there were 5 other players
100%
that were buying up Amazon brands and rolling them up into an aggregate company.
Correct. To
control those, because Amazon brands at this point have been very established to do very well. And actually a mutual friend in town, Matt Clark, created amazing.com, which taught people from, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, how to create an Amazon brand and how to maximize it and sell it. So this is downstream from that. 5 companies are functionally competitors, right? They're aggregators that are rolling.
They're aggregator, but only one real successful.
Got it. Okay.
And
awesome.
it successfully raised a lot of capital, but even that was early days for them. And so after we put that together, that idea is when I discovered and validated the business plan through Thrasio, who at that point
which is just the successful one.
Yes, they had a $750 million valuation. They've been around for 18 months.
Wow.
And I went, this just changed the world after they raised their last round, because I'm going to be able to access capital, because the capital markets were not interested in backing companies buying Amazon brands, because they were afraid of what Amazon will do, changing rules and putting them out of business. This changed everything. And with that, I called 7 private equity firms. I met with 6, ran through my very loose, not even tight business plan with them, and got 6 term sheets to fund us. I put 2 of my favorite together and raised $100 million to launch Foundry Brands. Then the next year plus of my life was about working with the team, building out we brought in incredible co-founders that came in from leadership of Amazon. We built the infrastructure, the system, did our first acquisitions, and built out the C-suite, and then hired the CEO. And then with that, my work was done last October.
And so since that point in time, you've had no involvement with Foundry, for at least you're not in the org chart at all.
Nope, not at all.
And you're still the largest shareholder.
Outside of my private equity partners.
Got it. Awesome. So the first amazing story, and the total time frame for that start when you got off the org chart?
It was 20 months.
20 months, raised $100 million, put the team in place, got out, maintained your share of the company, and it's still running now.
Yeah, they're spectacular.
Awesome. And the highlight there, or the beginning of that, which you've hit on a few times throughout the conversation, but was I played this game of adding a zero or adding a couple zeros. And functionally, you also gave, and we'll have to outline this separately, but you gave the steps that you went through to mentally break down how to add the zeros, which was questioning the assumptions you had on the different elements of what needed to be true or what your current belief systems were, which leads to the point, which is the big thing that changed there was your mindset.
100%. My whole mental framework has changed for everything I've done over the last 3 years. And therefore, everything is possible because of it. And that's, again, I'm going to say for a lot of early entrepreneurs, but I'm going to share this, that the limit, why does a business get stuck at $500,000 in annual revenue, or 3 million, or 5 million, or stuck at 10 or 50 or 100 or 200? Because business seems to hit a certain point and then they stick. Then they have incremental growth or incremental shrinkage. Why is that?
Tell me.
It's the person that's running it. It's either the founder or the CEO. They are the limitation to a company, because everyone gets to their mental place, either a comfort or discomfort. And then the ability to take off their blinders of everything. Again, the problem is that if it comes down to it, we've all had trauma in our lifetimes. Some of us that's more severe childhood trauma. Others had trauma throughout their lifetimes, but therefore our reptilian brain, basically our frontal cortex, basically creates loops in our head to protect us. And we live there to protect it. But that same thing that protects us is holding us back. The question is how can you responsibly unleash that, and understanding what the opportunity, live in abundance mindset, be very clear on the opportunities that are out there, and ask good questions all the time. Why not becomes a possibility versus why not to do that? And that's really what's changed with my mind. So in my mind, I'm looking for opportunities with high probability of success. I'm looking for opportunities for me. That means does not take a big investment to get into, but have a $1 billion opportunity and a real chance of getting to a $1 billion valuation. That also has positive impacts. Again, I look at my criteria of doing things, but those are my criteria if I meet with people, as I filter different things. And understanding is I can't do everything. So I'm going to be very select about what I'm doing. The other thing is that I shared up a few minutes ago is I need to surround myself with people that are positive, that are generative. I'm not saying that we don't have hard conversations. I'm not saying we're not challenging each other, but there's ways to be collaborative and challenging versus combat.
Yeah.
I can't live in a combative environment. I can't live with people that are just negatives. I better have a CFO who's questioning everything, but productively. And that's what I need. And if I surround myself with people and get involved with projects, it's this magic environment that is it's a reinforcing loop versus a negative reinforcing loop.
Yeah. Before we started, we were talking a little bit about mindset, and I think that and you hit on it just now, but so you have moved into a mindset of the $1 billion project. It's not worth doing if it doesn't have the possibility to hit that mark, right? But you also hit on all these other markers of what keeps an entrepreneur from going past $500,000 or 3 million or 5 or 10. And I think that it's worth highlighting that your shift doesn't have to be, what can I do to change this and make it $1 billion business?
No.
For whatever entrepreneur, right?
Add a zero on. Start with that.
Yep.
Just change your reference for it. I believe that we're all creative people. That's what innate human beings are creative. We're happiest when we're creating, when we're challenging ourselves. Okay. No matter what we do, even if we decide to take off for the rest of our life and just paint or do pottery, but there has to be some outlet of creativity and ways we're growing. If we're not growing, we're dying. And entrepreneurs are addicted with momentum. It's just part of our disease. That's just the way we're wired on that. So if that's so how do you challenge yourself to grow? Add a zero to what you're doing. Otherwise, you're not creating.
Yeah, well, and I think for me, even if I pull it out of the financial frame and say it just back to question my own beliefs that I think are true, right? I have these assumptions about business. Here's an exercise for any entrepreneur is you have friends that say, well, why don't you do this? And they're giving you ideas. And almost everybody defaults to answering the question of why they're not doing it. And one of the things that you said was instead of why not, ask why not. And so when a friend says, why aren't you doing it? An exercise is thinking about what could I do to change that right now? What would have to be true for this to be a possibility? And that's probably a smaller step than add a zero, but I actually personally, when I'm thinking about it, really like the idea of throwing the zero on and dealing with the ramifications of that.
Yeah.
Because once that thing's in front of you, then all the other things become downstream questions that you solve to get to the upstream.
But we don't, I limit this way. Someone says something to me, gives me an idea. My first thing is you don't fucking understand what I'm going through. You don't understand the knowledge and everything else. And your idea just doesn't make sense because of all these reasons.
Right.
Because it doesn't meet the right frame. Okay. But then flip it. What other idea does have valid? What will push you to think in a different way? And typically, if you take those ideas and allow you to just understand that it's not the specific solution you should be listening to, it is the creativity behind it. And it should be a spark to get you to think differently. Because if you think differently, the solution's out there. I learned that with my first business is I thought I had a business consumer business. I thought my Shipley catalog was a B2C business. That's what I thought. And my average transaction was $150. And I had the most incredible team that we're looking to optimize through merchandising and through optimizing our circulation plans about how we maximize that business. And cash was tight. I was bringing in investors as we were growing it and scaling it. And it's great that I developed this little B2B business on the side, which helped bring incremental cash. At my average order ticket was $3,500 a ticket. Back then, I didn't understand it as what I had a B2B business with a self-liquidating offer in the B2C world.
Oh shit, that's interesting.
But I was so focused on the ladder that I was building and making sure I had the most efficient ladder to build it, that the solution was just 2 degrees off to the left. And I just wasn't looking at it. That's called mindset.
Mm.
Again, so how do you shift? How do you take people's idea that you think are obnoxious, they don't understand you, but have the creativity to say, okay, that doesn't make sense, but this does it. Everything is spurring brainstorming.
Mm. Yeah. Some of that takes, for me, dropping the fucking ego. And that can be hard in the moment, but you hit it on the head, which was, you don't fucking know what I'm going through. You don't have context for my business. No, it's all these fucking reasons. Like, yeah, that's cute. Thank you for your thoughts. You don't think I fucking thought about that before? Come on. But taking that for what it's worth, one of the things that I've had to work on, that I'm still working on a lot is historically in my life, I would discredit people entirely when I would see one chink in their armor.
Yeah.
Right. I find one thing wrong with them and I would throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. And what I've gotten better at, and I continue to try to get better at, is what we're talking about, which is hearing the idea and hearing an idea and realizing, while this person might be terrible in other areas of life, or potentially all of them, if they have credibility in this one space, I should fucking listen to that one thing.
Yeah.
Right. I can grab that one thing.
Yeah.
But it takes an open mind and a questioning personality to get there or to do it. So I'm working on it. I love hearing that. And I love hearing the sort of the shift and success of Foundry and how you went through that process to get there.
And that created the door opening for the next thing. So
right. And so right now you're working on Ava, which is I am participating in also, which is exciting. And so Ava, give me the summary on Ava.
Okay.
So where did that take you?
So basically, when I left Foundry and I took time off with the same executive coach, Heath, who advised that I take some time off, lay in a field of grass in Italy and look left, right, up and down and understand how vast the universe is. And so don't do the same thing I've always done. And I've always been in product businesses. Right now, I'm not involved with any product businesses. I've redefined what I do and what I like to do. And the truth is, what I really like to do is I like to create platforms, and I love to take people that have spent their lives creating businesses and they got stuck or they're growing slowly. And how do I take their businesses, aggregate them and scale them to another level? Give them whatever destiny that entrepreneur wants, whether they want to stay in the business and operate at a higher level, whether they want to go on to do the next thing, but then develop and nurture their succession teams to do something great and take brands that have great capabilities and unleash them. It's what I love to do. I was looking at a number of different verticals when I left Foundry, saying, do I want to be in HVAC roll-ups? What type? What boring businesses out there are great that are ready for disruption? And Peter Lang, who I had the fortune enough to meet through an online M&A group 2 years ago. And then when I moved down to Austin, we started just hanging out and running and biking together. And I was following the way he actually was able to grow his agency by 500% during the early days of COVID by buying 6 agencies. And I said, okay, you're doing acquisition and you've developed through your programmatic approach. You developed this incredible pipeline. You've met with 650 agencies. You have 100 agencies that are ready to transact, but you bought 6 of them. I said, what now? I said, why aren't you doing the same thing that we're doing at Foundry? Why aren't you shooting for $1 billion valuation? And so with those bike rides where I just challenging him, and I think he was actually baiting me and drawing me in.
Yeah, he was.
He was really smart. So, and basically over those bike rides, we came up with this model of what we think is a disruptive way to build businesses, period. It's a smarter way to doing aggregate. It's a smarter way to scale at speed through acquisition and organic growth. And we believe that we're going to disrupt business in general. We're using this as the beta and we're teaching our techniques. So our core business is we're buying 5 agencies every 90 days. We just launched. We bought our first $6 million agency 5 weeks ago. Now we're going to be buying 4 more agencies at the middle of September. We have our next group that will close in. And right now, first group will close out in September, the next in November, and the next 5 will close in January, and then every day 90 days after that. We have more deals in the pipeline because of Peter's infrastructure that he's did for us to close deals over the next 2 years. And we have a unique approach in the way we're doing integration and scaling that basically takes away most of the risk from that typical aggregators do. So we're very excited about this platform. It's EQ over rigor. It is focused people-centric versus pure process and spreadsheets. Even though I'm an industrial engineer and I can cry to a spreadsheet, they sing to me. However, you cannot run your companies by culture is everything. You cannot run it through spreadsheets and pure processes. It's important, but it can't be everything. So we have this platform that I'm really excited about, that the team is the best team I've ever worked with. The culture is amazing. And every week it's a different company because of momentum there. In parallel to that, we launched a media company together. We brought in someone who is unbelievable at developing content program and running masterminds. She helped develop all the content and was in charge of content curation and mastermind for the a $350 million company. And this was a significant part of revenue for them. And she joined us recently, and she's building our mastermind out because basically we want to take everything we learned within Ava. We want to share that to the outside world to start this revolution, which also creates lead flow for Ava. So there's a lot of, it's an always reinforcing loop of how we're building it. And we're also, have other parts of our business in development. So really excited. And that's what we're doing there. But it starts with, take off the limitations, redo your operating assumptions, and develop something magic. Just because everyone else is doing it a certain way doesn't mean you should. I like to take proven frameworks, but it doesn't have to be the proven framework from this model, this industry. Proven frameworks of other industries, and let's plug it in here.
That's great. Well, I know we're coming up on time. I love all of that. I'm excited about Ava, but I also think that those frameworks and some of that thought process are things that I'll go back through the conversation and look at because, it's easy to theorize and it's easy to talk a big game. It's easy to discuss strategy, and it can be hard to put tactics to the strategy and execute through them. And I think that you've laid out a few different steps to doing that. So I appreciate you taking time to do it, man. That's
my pleasure. I'm also excited about the opportunities in front of you.
Yeah. Being Ava.
One of the many, because I know what is in front of you from opportunities, and I see you shifting and really taking advantage of it. So I'm excited about that.
I appreciate that.
And man. I'm really most excited about our friendships.
Likewise, man. Well, I'm glad that we've had more time together, and I'm looking forward to the future.
Same with me.
If people want to find out more about you or your brands or anything you want to point towards, where do they go?
You can always follow me on LinkedIn or Facebook. I do a lot of posting there about just what we're doing and my philosophies on that. Go to tshipley.com where you find my links to everywhere and information. And of course, follow us at Agency Ventures Aggregator, avaacquisitions.com.
Love it, man. Appreciate it. Tom, great to see you.
If you learned one thing on this episode, share it with another entrepreneur. They need to hear it. Also subscribe so that new episodes just show up on your phone. It's a lot easier that way. And if you want the really good stuff, check out our free BAM! Tactics and Strategies course. It's where we curate the best tips, tricks, and tools that our guests know, whether they've shared them on the podcast or not. Just go to beyondamill.com. You'll also find previous episodes and show notes at beyondamill.com.